Okay, hello again, everyone. Tonight I'll be talking about a, a newly announced Apple quality measure. It's called Advanced Video Quality Tool, or in short, AVQT. Um, a brief introduction on AVQT. So what is it? AVQT launched at Apple's 2021 WWDC. It's a command line tool that works only for Mac, on Mac devices. It's a full reference metric like PSNR and Vmap. Computes frame level and segment level scores. Handles in a variety of codecs and formats, not all of them. Supports SDR and HDR. Compares videos with different resolutions. Takes viewing device resolution as well as viewing distance into account, and you can set viewing device resolution and also viewing distance. We'll get to the more details as we go. And at the end, you can store the scores or save the scores in different formats like CSV or JSON. The range of scores are from 1 to 5. So 1 is the worst quality, and 5 is being like an excellent quality. And they are just following ACR range. Like 1 means bad and 5 means excellent here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then just they report you some score, like a floating points score. So you may get like 1.5, 1.6, or 4.2, 4.3. But the interpretation of the scores are kind of, in a gray area. There is no concrete way of, defining whether that score belongs to excellent or good or something like that. The usage is pretty simple. You may run this AVQT, you pass the test video and reference video, and bunch of options. I provide you here a few options. The list of the options is way longer than what I provided in this slide. But the options they include, let's say, different metrics, temporal pooling. You can set the device resolution. You can set the viewing distance. If the videos are YUV, apparently you need to pass all the metadata, like a resolution of the source, resolution of the test, pixel formats, frame per second, and so on and so forth. But it is only on Mac. It's just you cannot use AVQT on your Linux machine or your Windows machine. So after this brief introduction, I'm going to talk about a success criteria for a reliable quality measure. So given a quality measure, whether that is an AVQT or Vmap or other quality metric, what are the main success criteria for a reliable quality measure? If I wanted to use a quality metric or a quality measure in my workflows, or and then, let's say in general in the industry, what would be the main success criteria? So I've provided you a list of success criteria. This list, again, this list can go longer than what we have here, but these are the main points that I can think about it, and I will be talking about each item in more details. The first and foremost thing is that any quality metric or measure that should be used in the industry, it has to be consistent across content types. So what does it mean? It means that if you give me a score in the range of, let's say, 0 to 100, 70 for the animation should match 70 for game or talking head or news. So perceptually, you should perceive these 70s or these two quality or these two different contents at the same quality. So 70 on score as on animations means or aligns with 70 perceptually on let's say using news or talking heads or sports. Now the question is AVQT consistent across content types? Look at this frame. So this frame has a lot of compression artifact. So I compress this frame, and then you may see like a lot of compression artifact here, there, and also something that is close to banding artifact, in this corner of the image. By the way, the samples I'm presenting in my presentation, they are available in our website. I will post the link in the chat box. Let's do that now before moving forward. So this is the link. Here we go. So if for some reason, because of the online presentation, you may not see any artifact or impairment, or the frames look different to you, so you may just go to the website and see a better representation of these frames. So if you look at the frame, you see a bunch of artifacts here, there. It's a very simple frame without any intricate texture or so. If you look at the AVQT, you see the quality score for AVQT is 4.71, which is in an excellent range. Vmap rates this as like 75, which is in a good range, but Simplus says like 17, which is in the bad range. If I go to the next frame, or to the next video frame, there is a lot of details and on the road, and also there is you may see more detail on grass, and then overall it looks great. It's not pristine, but it looks fine to me, and the quality looks great. So again, AVQT says the quality is 4.75, which we agree it is in the range of excellent. Vmap says, well, you know what, it's not excellent, it's good, and 70.1, but Simplus says 90. So I go back and forth to just refresh your mind and just watch these two frames again. So you see that the AVQT in both cases gives you an excellent range, or 4.70. Vmap says good in this range, 75, but lower score for this one, which looks better to me as a viewer. But Simplus is more aligned with what we perceive. Consistency is not only important across different content type, but having an absolute metric is a necessary thing, as an essential point, or essential thing if you wanted to do optimization. So if you think about consistency, so perceptually 70 means 70, no matter what content I'm dealing with. Even within an asset, if you think about like per segment optimization, per shot optimization, or per scene optimization, if your metric is not an absolute metric, you cannot optimize each segment individually or separately. So here I'm providing, again, two frames from the same asset. So you can assume that I'm doing like a per segment scoring, or I'm taking two segments out of an asset. For this one, for this piece of content, or for this piece of the asset, you see that Vmap is 83.64, again, in an excellent range. Simplus says, you know what? No, it's unfair. It's 48.49. Which is more aligned to my perception, because I see a lot of pixelation or blockiness. And this one, if you look at Vmap for this one is not that forgiving. Vmap says, you know what, it's 56.45. It's not a good quality. Simplus says the same thing, the same story. Simplus says, for this is 48.40. This is also 48 to Simplus. But if you look at Vmap, you see like a huge fluctuation. So from an excellent range, we go to like a fair range, which means that like it's not very consistent even across one content type, from this piece of content to the other piece of content. So, and this makes our optimization very difficult. So if we wanted to do optimization, we really need to have an absolute metric. Otherwise, the optimization would be like suboptimal. The next important feature of a reliable metric would be like a consistency across different impairments. So you know that we have lots or many types of impairments, like from blockiness to blurriness, noise, banding, color difference, anything. Like you you may have seen a lot of or many types of impairments. A reliable metric should be sensitive to everything. So it shouldn't be sensitive to a category of impairments, but they are not sensitive, or it's not sensitive to the other category of the impairments. Which again, it's if you find that metric, if you find a metric that is sensitive to like a group of impairments and not to the other group of impairments, you may know that that metric is not a reliable metric. As an example, what I can provide you here to give you a rough idea what I mean by different impairments or consistency along or across the impairments. Here you see a frame with like a contouring effect as an impairment type that is called banding or contouring effect. Contouring is very common, or banding is very common these days. Sometimes the banding is very subtle, so maybe you may not notice that, but sometimes the banding or contouring is very, very obvious, like what you see here in this frame. If you look at AVQT score, the AVQT says it's excellent, 4.6. Vmap says the same story. So Vmap tells you the same, 92.57, which again is an excellent range. Simplus, on the other hand, says, no, it's terrible. It's 19. It's a very, very bad quality. So here you may argue that, you know what, maybe the source of this frame has some sort of banding as well. It's not a fair comparison. You're just comparing a full reference metric like AVQT or Vmap to Simplus. What if the source had some sort of banding, and AVQT is saying that comparing to the source, this frame is not that bad, or the difference is not that much? To prove that the source didn't have or doesn't have banding, so I'm providing you the source or the reference frame here. So you see that the banding is very, very important in an important artifact or an important impairment that is an annoying impairment, and you perceive it very obviously. So everyone sees this banding, and it is very annoying. But if you look at AVQT and Vmap, it proves that the scores actually prove that these methods or these metrics, they cannot capture this specific impairment type. Whereas like Simplus, which is very sensitive to banding impairment. One more thing that I wanted to mention about Simplus is that we not only, or Simplus not only reports score, but also gives you the banding map. So banding map shows the contours or the border of the contours. So then if you watch, or if you wanted to just automate like the content selection or quality assessment on a library of asset, you may notice that like by just using banding map, you may notice banding in different location, and where to look at your content, and where what part of your content is more susceptible to banding. The third important aspect of the quality measure or reliable quality measure is the source quality, is the capability to measure the quality of the source, or just look at the source and then measure the quality. And if I wanted to put it in a more scientific term, it should be a no reference measurement as well. To elaborate on that, let's pass this source. This is my source frame. I pass it to an encoder, and encoder does a perfect job, 100%, and it gives me exactly the same input. So output and source, they're exactly the same. So the encoder has done a great job. It gives you exactly the same input. Run AVQT, it gives you 5, or the perfect score, excellent. There is no difference between source and output. It is true. Vmap, the same thing. They are full reference method, right? So I mean, Vmap gives you 100 as well. It is true. There is no difference between source and output, and that's why you see 5 for AVQT and Vmap 100. But as a viewer, as a user, as like a human eye, if when you watch this content, when you watch this video or frame, you cannot tolerate that. You may abandon that media session. If you were watching this content on YouTube or something, I personally would have closed that bar or closed that session and have restarted. So here the fact is that Simplus is a method that cares about source quality. So Of course, garbage in, garbage out, 100%, or the encoding part is done in 100% in the perfect mode. But if you look at the actual quality or the actual content quality, you see that the content quality is not that great. SimPlus is capable to watch the source quality, assess the quality of the source, and also the encoder performance, and gives you a score as a function of these two scores. That's why you see SimPlus gives you 15 for this content. No matter how great the encoder is, at the end, as an end viewer, as an end user or viewer of this frame, I don't agree with 100 or 5. This frame is terrible. I cannot tolerate watching this frame, and I may agree with SimPlus more compared to AVQT and Vmap. The other aspect of a reliable quality measure would be consistency across different content attributes. So encoder can take input and then produce output, and the difference there are differences between input and output. The frame rates can be different, like the resolution can be different. A lot of things can be changed, right? The video, your input video and the output video, and also this, even if you use the same attributes, these attributes play an important role in the quality of the content or quality of the video. For example, color is one of the important things that people care about, or human visual system care about. So you cannot be very like a color blind to the quality of the video. So if the video is not basically some bunch of textures and structures, so video is a combination of everything. And as a whole, and as a user, we actually watch it as a whole, and we score it as a whole. So here is a very simple example. I took a color bar, I altered the color, and then I ran the quality measures. So AVQT gives you 5, which means that AVQT is kind of color blind, so it doesn't matter how much you mess up with the color. At the end, AVQT doesn't care about it. Vmap does care about color, but it's not enough. It's a very subtle difference between these two frames. So here, Vmap says, 97.42. To me, it's not a big deal. There is no difference between reference and output, and the range is excellent. Whereas, like, if you, as a viewer, as a user, when you watch these two content, you may not agree with these scores. So SimPlus says it is 0. It's bad. I mean, you cannot watch it. I mean, look at put your feet on like a studio guy's shoes. Like, let's say you are a content creator, you cannot tolerate that. So people, they have messed up. Let's say encoder or anything in the middle, it has messed up with the color of your preference or your creative intent or your content. You cannot tolerate that. And as part of the color volume difference score that SimPlus gives you, it produces color volume difference map as well. So brighter shade means more difference, and darker shade means less deviation in terms of color. So this is the color is one of the content attributes that is very important to human visual system, and it matters. The other content attribute that is very common these days, and people, they talk about it quite often, is HDR, or high dynamic range. So HDR gives you richer color. It gives you like a brighter bright, darker dark, or higher contrast. It is very appealing, viewing experience. So you may know that HDR content, I cannot put it here, and you cannot watch HDR content using our Google Meet platform or standard displays. Nothing is capable of visualizing HDR content here in our meeting tonight. But this is like an SDR version of that HDR frame that they've provided here. This is basically I've taken this from a famous Spark asset prepared by Netflix. It's an open source content. You may download it and play with it. I added some compression artifact on top of that, and it computed the scores. AVQT gives me 5, which means excellent. Vmap is not applicable here because Vmap does not handle HDR, and for sure we don't have any Vmap score for this frame. But Simplus says, no, there is some sort of degradation impairment in this frame. It's not excellent. It's not perfect. It's actually in a good range, or 79. One thing that I did to give you some sense of the distortion and how it looks, or the content or the HDR content looks like on a TV or on a HDR device. One kind of trick that I do, I know that this is kind of a lame trick, but usually I do that. I watch this content on my LG C9 at home, and then I took picture using my cell phone. So by doing that, you may get some sort of sense of the the distortion that's happening. And if I just wanted to highlight some regions, you may see a block, like some blockiness here on cloth, and some blockiness at the background, and like in hand, and then it's the same thing here. Again, it's not the perfect representation of the look and feel that you get on your TV or on your HDR display, but it gives you some sort of an idea that you know what, there are some distortion. It's not an excellent range. I took another frame out of the same asset. I compressed that, and then I computed the scores. Again, this is not an HDR look of the content, but you have to watch it on TV or an HDR display to see what I'm talking about in terms of the distortion. AVQT in this case again gives you 4.69 in an excellent range. Vmap is not applicable, but Simplus here it says it's 83. It's not perfect. There are something in it. It's not an excellent range. Again, I did the same trick. I watched it on LG TV, and then I took a picture. And then I'm not sure if you see it or not, but certainly there are some banding in the sky, which I'm trying to highlight those here. And hopefully Google Meet gives you some sort of idea about the banding in the sky, and also some compression artifact on the t-shirt. So that means like there are some content attributes that like the AVQT and Vmap, they are stumbled around, and they cannot handle those content attributes correctly. The other important aspect of a quality measure that is very, very important and appealing, specifically in the industry, is support for devices. So device, again, has an important role in your perceived quality. So you may watch one content on your cell phone with that's little tiny, teeny tiny size, or the same content on your TV, and then you may experience you may have a totally different experience by watching the same content on two different devices. So a quality metric should have the notion of device. Otherwise, again, it's not very reliable to be used in the industries and different workflows. AVQT handles some sort of handles devices, but there are some gaps in it. In terms of the devices, they have some preset viewing distance. You cannot set anything to viewing distance. 1.5 times the height of the device, 3 times of the height of the device, and 4.5 times height, and 6 times height. You may also set the device resolution, but not the size of the device. This is something that, again, we refer to as a gap. Of course, device resolution matters, but the most important thing is that, in the combination of the device resolution, the device size matters too. So we did a bunch of experiments using AVQT, and we tried to see how the AVQT behaves, and using different devices, and how device dependency of AVQT feature works. And we came across a couple of observations by doing some experiments. I'm presenting 2 experiments here, and the results, or the interesting results that I got. The first thing that I did is that I took one video, like 720p video, and I passed it as a test and reference. So the same video, I passed it in the source and the reference, and I set the display resolution to be like an UHD, or 3840 by 2160. So it's a UHD display device, the same source, the same output, but I'm varying the viewing distance. So you see that as you vary viewing distance, your score remains the same. Your scores remain the same. So 5 in this case, that the viewing distance is 1.5. Change the viewing distance to 3, the same thing, 5. 4.5 gives you 5. 6 again gives you 5. So we agree that in terms of the encoding performance, or in terms of the whatever you see in this in the native resolution, so if you pass the source and output to be the same, like in terms of the distortion, like the encoding, or like the compression artifact, let's say, you may not see a huge difference, but when you do watch it on the bigger screen, there is an upscaling happening, or there is another like a artifact that's involved in user experience. And then if you consider the viewing distance, as you get closer to TV, the score is supposed to be, to drop basically. So as you get closer to the display, you may see more artifacts. And then as you get further to like from the TV, the artifact gets like less noticeable, and then the score goes up. But in this case, in this experiment, it shows that no matter what the viewing distance is, the viewing distance is, AVQT remains the same, 5, 5, 5, 5 for all the viewing distance. In the second experiment, and for a variety of content type, we saw another anomaly from AVQT. So in this experiment, what I did, I had like a 360p video as a reference. I encoded like using CRF30, and I passed that as an encoder, as an output, let's say as an output. And the display resolution is UHD, 3840 by 2160. And I set the viewing distance to be 1.5 times the height of the device. AVQT in this case it comes out to be like 3.78. Okay. Do the same experiment. I did the same experiment, but everything is the same except the viewing distance. I set the viewing distance to be 3 times the height of the display, and the score is actually lower. So it's a kind of counterintuitive. So as a user, or as a viewer, basically, when you get closer to display, you expect the score to be lower, not higher. I thought that maybe it's because of just one same, this content, or maybe I'm mistaken or so. I passed another content. I repeated the experiment using the different content. The same thing. I encoded that using CRF20, passed as a reference, and then the encode as a test. Display resolution, UHD. I changed the viewing distance, 1.53, and again, when you look at the 1.5, when you look at the score, the AVQT score for 1.5 times the height of the device is actually higher than the 3 times the height of the device, which is quite weird, because again, it's counterintuitive. The intuition says if you get closer to the display, you see more impairment, so the scores or the score should go like a lower. The other aspect of the quality metric, or a reliable quality metric, is the support for viewer modes, or different viewer modes. Let's talk about this item a little bit more. So what does it mean? We have different users, of different viewers in the world. So at one part of the spectrum, you can imagine people who work in the studios every day. So, they are content creators. So they are very, very meticulous about the quality of the video, or the quality of the content. So they watch every detail. They care about every detail of the content. They watch content corner to corner, and then they care about preserving the creative intent. So they are very, very tough guys, and they are kind of golden eyes. They look at the content and they cannot ignore anything, any deviation from the source. This is one part of the spectrum. The other side of the spectrum, they are just maybe 90% of the of the board. They are typical viewers. They care about content. They get engaged with the content, and for sure the content has an impact on their viewer or viewing experience. But at the same time, they care about quality to some extent. So they cannot even. Of course, they get involved to the content, but at the same time, they cannot tolerate watching terrible quality videos. So something in the middle, we call it expert viewers. So expert viewers are people who work in the video industry, so who work with videos, not necessarily in the video industry. Maybe they are some sort of an artist working with videos. So these people are more, picky in terms of the quality of the content or the quality of the video. So there are some things in the middle of typical and content creators. But why I'm talking about these viewers and what's the point of prepare or presenting these viewers? The main message here is that you cannot provide one single score and say that this is the quality of the video. You have to consider your audience. You have to consider your viewer. So if your viewer is coming from studios, that score means totally different to let's say typical viewers. So 3 or let's say 50 or 70 to content creators mean totally different things compared to 70 to like a typical viewers. So it matters. We cannot just report one single score for all types of viewers. Um, Another thing is about the workflows. So if you think about different workflows or different video workflows, a reliable quality measure is the one that works for the most common workflow, like your live, linear, and file-based workflows. So that can score, first of all, that should be consistent. So it doesn't mean that like 70 in live means 70 in linear, 70 and 70 in file-based. So it should be consistent across the workflows. At the same time, it should handle both workflows or all the workflows. If you think about live, one important thing or one important feature of a quality metric is the speed. So if we wanted to deploy a quality metric in a live workflow, it has to be very fast. It has to be real time. So if you think about that, so in that sense, AVQT is very efficient. And there is no doubt about it. It's very fast. It's way faster than Vmap. But the important issue is that it only supports macOS. So there is no guarantee that in workflow everything is coming from Mac side, or so everything supports Mac. SimPlus is an efficient, flexible, and consistent across all workflows. It is fast, and it also works with all the platforms. The last but not least is the playback viewer experience. I'm pretty sure that everyone, like specifically in this talk, uh, you watch tons of internet videos like in a year. So you play your videos using players, and you may experience a lot of player events because of the network issues, because of the player issues. You may have experienced playback events like like startup delays, interruptions, rebuffering, profile switching, and so on and so forth. So these player events, they impact viewer experience at the end. So as a user, when you watch like a content on an OTT service, so you're dealing with the player and also the network. And no matter how pristine your content is, how good the presentation of the quality of the content is or video quality is, in terms of the experience, you expect no interruption, no delay or stall or something, and anything like that that may affect your experience. So again, a very good and reliable quality metric should handle every piece or every point or monitoring point if you think about the delivery workflow or delivery, a video delivery chain. So video delivery chain consists of so many components. It consists of like includes studios, like encoding side, and all the way to the end user. And the by end user, we mean like a player. So end user watches content using player, and these player events may change viewing experience. So long story short, if we wanted to just list all of those main aspects and think about different quality measure that we have these days, so we, if you if you wanted to just provide a comparison metrics, that would look like something like what we have here in this slide. So first of all, the quality metric should be consistent across content types. It should be consistent across impairments. I provided you example about banding. It should also care about source quality. So it's not all about full reference measurement. We have to look into the no reference measurement as well. So we have to assess the quality of source as well. It should be consistent across content attributes. It should handle HDR properly. It should handle color deviation or skin tone deviation, color volume distortion. Device is another important aspect that a quality metric should handle. For viewer mode, again, I just talked about it. We have different viewing, or viewer modes, and one single score cannot, satisfy all the viewers. It should that quality metric should be consistent across live and VOD and should handle these different workflows. And at the end, just playback viewing experience is another aspect that a very good quality metric should handle that. So here, I'm presenting like a different, gaps and capabilities of different quality metrics. You see that like Vmap, AVQT, PSNR, they have some good part and bad part. And Simplus is something that we can assume that it can handle all of these important 8 items. Yeah, thank you everyone for listening to my talk, and I would be more than happy to answer any question if you have.
Thank you, Hojat. That was really good. It was pretty thorough and investigation into what AVQT offers. Yeah, so I'll open the floor up now to any questions. You can raise your hand or just unmute yourself.
I have a quick question. So you mentioned the AVQT, the range of scores is basically 0 to 5 or 1 to 5 or something like that. Is that a linear scale, or is it logarithmic, or kind of is 4 twice as good as 2, or how does that work?
Yeah, they claim that it's kind of linear scale. Again, it should, like, more experiments should be done on that, but this is what they do, what they claim. So it's a kind of linear.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
I know you mentioned the speed of AVQT, and you said it was way faster than Vmap. I forget if did you say how fast, or?
Based on my experiment, it was like it was real time for even UHD content. It was real time.
Okay. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Sold. Okay. Well, thank you again, Hojat, for coming in and giving the talk. And
you're very welcome.